Hey, deserving listeners, I thought I would react to psychology TikToks. Let's watch.
Life and in business. It is called the teacher stare. Now, when I was in 7th grade, thankfully, I had an amazing teacher who told me, Gia, I know you're drifting off, but in order to succeed, I need you to do this for me. Now, what I love about this is it was an actual teacher who taught it to me, which is basically a way to manipulate teachers, but it works so well. Anybody who's talking, this applies in work, people who are giving presentations are in this active vulnerability. So they are actively looking for people who look engaged. So all you have to do is keep eye contact with a neutral, positive look. The key is to maintain eye contact regardless of what you're thinking about. And believe me, most of the time, my neurodivergent brain was having obsessive thoughts about the most random of things.
This is something right up my alley since I'm a professor. She's talking about how a hack that will get you straight A's. Now that is an exaggeration, but what she's saying is how can you maybe improve your grades a little bit or improve the experience of being in a class or in a presentation or make the presenter or teacher like you a little bit more, maybe be on your side a little bit more. And one of the ways you can do that is when they are lecturing, just have a neutral eye contact face. And as a professor, I'm extremely attuned to that. It feels bad when you're a professor and you're teaching and no one's looking at you, especially in a small classroom when they're, my class is typically, it's like 5 to 15 students. And so when you have 10 students and they're all looking down and you're yammering on, you just feel like it just feels bad. Now, the thing that I would say to myself as a professor is I must be boring. That's why I don't have it. Because sometimes I would have eye contact and sometimes I wouldn't. And so what I would do as a professor is I would use their eye contact as a gauge of how interesting I was. And a lot of good lectures are extremely boring. You want to be engaging. And so part of my skill set on YouTube was actually developed in the classroom, trying to stay active, trying to make things go quickly, trying to, tackle topics in a way that keeps people interested, because there's a way of lecturing where, you cover all the bases, but it's extremely dry. It doesn't really get someone emotionally. So what she's talking about is when you're on the other side of it, to try to be cool to the presenter. You don't have to be thinking about what they're saying. You could literally be daydreaming, but to be polite and maybe to get them on your side. And that might be a factor that will I'm realizing more and more that on TikTok, the title, because the title is, this psychology hack will work like magic. That will get you straight A's. No, having eye contact, if that's all you do, with a professor, it's not going to result in straight A's. Obviously, it could be a factor, but really kind of a minor one. I mean, a big one is studying, making sure you understand the assignments, being on time, that kind of thing.
Like why more people don't talk about the repurposing of venom, but I digress. Now, because they will be looking for your gaze every once in a while when they're talking about something that you can tell they think is a little complicated, you look slightly confused. They will rush to clear up the confusion. And then you get it. Okay.
I mean, I don't know why you have to consider this a hack. That's just feedback if you're a student. And this happens sometimes where I will notice a student who has a confused look on their face, and I'll just ask them. I'll just say like, I see a confused look. I will say half the time the student will be like, did I have a confused? There are students who have resting, confusing face. I'm going to tell you that. I've seen that before. There's a whole variety of different resting something faces. There'll be resting disapproval face, and I'll ask like, "Are you disapproving?" It always kind of looks like you're angry at me, and they'll be, "Oh, is that?" And as a trainer of therapists, I have to actually give them direct feedback about that because it does affect. Because if they listen to their clients and they don't know how they're coming across with their face, then that's important for them to know. But anyway, so what she's saying is when you have a professor that says something that you don't understand, a hack, a psychology hack is to manufacture a confused look on your face instead of just being like, I don't get it. And as a professor, I'm here to tell you, at least for me, it's important that I know you don't get it because that's my whole job. If you don't get it, I have failed my job. It's not your fault that you don't get it. It's my fault you don't get it. So just raise your hand.
Now, this sounds ridiculous, but I can tell you that loop of them being able to explain something and have the satisfaction of knowing that their explanation made you understand it is such a rush that they will forever love you and give you all of the good grades.
Yeah, I suppose that is kind of true. But they will forever give you good grades? No. Now, will it help in your building of a relationship such that you can actually feel more comfortable asking questions, such that they might be more willing to put more time into helping you? On average, absolutely. Because what she's saying, it's like, well, if you want to manipulate your professors into giving you straight A's, whenever you hear something that's slightly confusing, manufacture a quizzical face, then they explain it to you, and then you manufacture oh my God, thank you so much. That manipulates them to get you good grades. How about you just tell the truth? And when you're confused, just raise your hand and say, I'm confused. So then you learn the thing. That's the whole purpose of the course. The grades are supposed, they don't always, but the grades are supposed to be an indication of your learning. So if you actually learn the thing and raise your hand when you're confused and ask for feedback so you actually do learn the thing such that you perform well on the examination that measures your understanding and you get a good grade. I just don't think you have to manipulate your professors, and I don't think it would work either.
There were so many times that I would have gotten in trouble, but I didn't. And it's why even when I was teaching a class for college students, I told them to use it on me. Just think of it as a mutually beneficial accommodation for your beautiful brain.
Right. So she's saying, when I was a professor, I told them to do this to me. And yeah, I mean, if she's saying it as a manipulation, but really what she's saying is, hey, how about we all just take care of each other in the classroom? I take care of you and you take care of me. I'm vulnerable and I have needs, and I really get a lot of pleasure when I feel like I'm helping someone, and I feel really bad about myself when no one's paying attention. And so if you could just try to at least act like you're paying attention, or just, don't make it very obvious that you're not paying attention, like it really would help me out emotionally. If that's how, if she's just wording it differently, but that's the gist, yeah, absolutely.
This psychology hack is so effective, but can actually be really dangerous if used unethically. So as long as you promise to use this...
Okay, so if history tells me anything, this psychology hack isn't going to be very compelling to me, because they often start this way. They say, hey, I'm about to tell you something that works to manipulate other people, but I'm only going to tell you as long as you agree not to use it on anyone else. I've heard that in many other videos. I'm starting to learn a pattern, so let's see what she has to say.
This psychology hack is so effective, but can actually be really dangerous if used unethically. So as long as you promise to use this one for good, keep watching. When you want someone to answer a certain way, let them know how others have answered this similar question in the past. Example, we typically see people put down about a $5,000 deposit. Most of the time, people sign up for the premium version so they can access X. Letting them know how others have answered this question in the past helps them lead to the response that you want. Like and follow for more.
What? So, okay, she's saying, so I thought I was going to hear, if you want to make someone fall in love with you, you've got to neg them first, and then you compliment them, and then you got them dependent on you, and that's the typical one. But yeah, I mean, this is a known psychological phenomenon. It's in a whole category of research regarding nudging and influence and suggestion. It's not magical. It doesn't hack into your brain the way that they're proposing. But the idea is that under some circumstances, not all obviously, that when you ask a question to someone and you're hoping for one answer, and the person has this momentary experience of anxiety of not answering the question right or not knowing what to say. And if you give them an out and say, well, a lot of other people will say this to that, then people will say, okay, that's fine. Because we tend to follow, all of us like to think that we're leaders and that we don't follow crowds, that we're nonconformists, but we all are conformists. Every human on the planet tends to do what other people have done before them, tends to follow in other people's footsteps because it's just safer, right?
Psychology hacks you need to know. If you want to make someone uncomfortable, look at their forehead while you're talking to them. If you want somebody to open up to you more, ask them a question, and if they only partially answer it, keep eye contact and stay silent. It will pressure them to talk more.
Okay, yeah. I mean, these aren't ridiculous things like some of the TikToks. So if you want to make someone uncomfortable, stare at their forehead. Yeah, they'll be uncomfortable because they know you're staring at their forehead. They'll be like, why are you staring at my forehead? Like, it's not it's not a hack. It's like saying, if you want to make someone feel uncomfortable, like punch them in the shoulder randomly. I think it's not really a mystery as to why that would cause someone to feel uncomfortable. The other one, though, is more subtle and definitely not universal. And it is a kind of a sales technique. I wonder if a lot of salespeople get tips from TikTok or something. A lot of the psychology hacks are more geared towards, because why else would you need these things, really? It's not like in my life I need to extract information from people against their will, And this reminds me of like Jack Donaghy on 30 Rock and, other kinds of characters that it's a well-known phenomenon that when you stay quiet, it's particularly if the other person feels anxiety, it puts the other person in this anxious, it ramps up their anxiety if you don't say anything, because it implies there's a disapproval or an anticipation of something. If you're the quiet one, it's like you're not saying you don't like what they're saying, but you're not saying you like what they're saying, right? And so it pushes the other person into like, okay, how do I please this person? Whereas if you keep talking, it sort of illuminates the fact that you're trying to pressure someone, and then that, it's subtle though, and it doesn't always work. So how to get someone to open up to you? There's a lot of other factors because as a therapist, this is obviously something that I'm a professional who tries to get people to open up to me or tries to create a space in which people feel comfortable being honest with me. And so what I'll say is there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not someone will open up to you. Just being quiet when they don't give you all the information you want is, like, for example, I train therapists. I've never told them to do this. I've never said, if you're really trying to get someone to open up, just stare at them and don't say anything like that. There's so many other ways, like saying, hey, would you like to say anything else? Or being genuine yourself, or being extremely empathetic. There's much more effective ways to get someone to open up to you.
If you want to be more persuasive, try and lose the words I think and I believe. When someone is touched...
Again, it's a simplification, but it's not a bad argument. It's not a bad assertion. It's not a bad reminder. And actually, I deal with this with my students when they write clinical papers. I will actually flag whenever they say I think or I believe or I feel. They will say something, because it's a normal way that people talk, and a lot of people write the way they talk. And so they'll say like, I feel like the client, da-da-da. And I'll flag it, and I'll be like, so as a clinician, you're going by your feelings. Like, that's not okay. You diagnose or assess or have a clinical perspective based on data and based on research and based on clinical understanding and consultation and inquiry. You don't base it on I feel. It's like, I kind of feel like it's going to rain today. If the weather person on TV said, I kind of feel like there's going to be a hurricane, you'd be like, you feel like there's going to be do you have data that there's going to be a hurricane? So as a clinician, don't say I feel or I think. Just make the statement and then provide evidence and backup for your claim. Make it clear as to, you make an assertion and then you have reasons why you're making that assertion. Not everyone understands that, and so I try to, and some students do, of course, but some students don't. So I try to really help them with that, and it's normal, they're students. So, but he's saying, in order to be more persuasive, don't say I think or I feel. Again, if we're talking about how to be more persuasive in general, just in like communication, there's 1,000 different things we could talk about, and maybe that would be one of them, kind of.
On their shoulder or their knees, it creates a stronger emotional and physical bond with the...
Okay, I get it. It's TikTok. They have to be extremely brief, and psychology is anything but brief. So they're trying to shove a round peg into a square hole by keeping everything brief. So saying how to build a stronger bond. Put your hand on their shoulder or their, what they say here, waist or something, because it builds a stronger bond. I mean, again, if you want to build a stronger bond, there's probably a million things that you could consider. And just putting your hand on their shoulder, now, physical affection, consensual physical affection can absolutely bond people. How about just say that? Hey, among the 1,000 things that you do to build a stronger bond with someone, consider physical affection. Moving on, instead of put your hand here and that will build a stronger bond.
Even if their body and head is turned towards you, they are uncomfortable with you walking up. Subtly nodding when someone is talking to you indicates to that person that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say and they're gonna like you more. Follow for more. Psychology hacks you need to know. If you want to make someone uncomfortable, look at their forehead while you're talking to them. If you want somebody to open up to you more, ask them a question, and if they only partially answer it, keep eye contact and stay silent. It will pressure them to talk more. If you want to be more persuasive, try and lose the words I think and I believe. When someone is touched on their shoulder or their knees, it creates a stronger emotional and physical bond with the person touching them. Chewing gum can help you when you're nervous because your brain thinks, well, I'm eating, I must not be in danger.
Okay, this one actually has some truth to it because it's a simple claim, and it is a thing that we found in the research, kind of. And it depends, and it also is a thing on average, meaning that chewing gum isn't going to reduce stress or anxiety for everyone. And it also, if it does reduce stress or anxiety, it might do it in a very small degree and only in some contexts, but it is true. And we don't know why. He has the common speculation, but we can't know that. We don't have the technology to make that claim. It is intuitive, given all the other data, that it's possible that when you're chewing, we evolved to understand, it's a similar thing that when you deep breathe. And, when you're breathing very slowly and deeply, it is associated with times when you're not being chased by a lion. And thus, a lot of other systems will respond to that behavior and calm down your blood pressure, anxiety, this kind of thing. So the same goes for chewing, is that when you're chewing, the body thinks, oh, well, you must not be running from a lion. There must not be danger. Let's slow everything down. We don't need to be hypervigilant. We don't need to be scared. And that's the idea. We don't know if that's true, though, because, again, like I said, we'd have to evolve human beings over time and da-da-da. We just don't have that ability or money or ethics to break anyway. But, yeah, it is worth trying that if you have anxiety and stress and you try chewing gum, or honestly, what I'd say first is try deep breathing because that's more likely to work. But in addition to that, you could try chewing gum and then see if it works for you. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you're, one of many people that it doesn't work with.
If you walk up to a group of people and they turn their feet towards you, you are welcome.
No, there could be a lot of reasons why someone turns this is a category of claims that they will make that really have no basis in the research. To say that whenever someone turns their feet to you, you are, and what does welcome mean exactly, right? But, does body language say something? Does, facing someone fully, is that potentially an indication that you are open to them or welcoming them or something along those lines? Yeah, maybe. But, there's a lot of other. Plus, there are much easier ways to gauge whether or not someone is welcoming you, like literally just asking them, is it okay if I join you? Yes or no.
Have their feet turned away from you, even if their body and head is turned towards you, they are uncomfortable with you walking up.
So he's just saying the opposite, if their feet. So this is a category of TikTok of claims, but I've seen these claims for decades before TikTok existed. The appeal is like, forget about having to learn how humans work because it's very complicated. I'm just going to tell you this simple rule, and that will tell you everything about everything. And of course, that's very seductive, but just not true in this instance.
Subtly nodding when someone is talking to you indicates to that person that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say, and they're going to like you more.
I mean, maybe some people need to be told that, and some people do. I've actually helped people with social skills, and I will literally have to say, when you're listening, nod your head, because if you nod your head to someone, it indicates to the other person that you're listening and that you're engaging and that you're with them and you agree with them or you're on board with what they're saying. So nod your head. Yeah. I wouldn't call that a psychology hack. He's calling it a psychology hack. I would call it a common human and it might not even be universally culturally, but at least in the United States, subtly nodding your head. Now, will it make people like you more? Well, I don't know. Maybe you could say that on average. If you walk up to someone and like just stare at them as you're listening, as opposed to nodding your head. So yeah, but I wouldn't say like, I want to get this person to like me, so I'm going to nod at them. Of course, the reasons why people like you are varied. All right, well, that is it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.